In this video, we strive to remain spoiler-free, discussing only story and plot elements from the books relevant to what has occurred already on the show. When necessary, a spoiler warning with a countdown will be given.
Hi, I'm Jen.
I'm Max.
I'm Bill.
And I'm the Geeky Hippie. Welcome back to What the Adaptation, the YouTube channel that reviews adaptations from one form to another. This week, we start up on Children of Dune from the Sci-Fi Channel, their miniseries. But you may have noticed I'm not introducing a guest this week because we don't have a guest this week. Bill is on as a full-fledged cast member. Welcome, Bill. How you feeling?
I'm feeling pretty good. I can't thank you enough for having me, guys. I know you're knee-deep in some other series that I'm trying to get caught up on, so hopefully I can catch up to you.
Right. You should have plenty of time.
Hmm.
So, Max, can you tell us what episode we're discussing tonight?
Well, it's the Children of Dune, episode 1. I don't know if it actually has an episode name.
The Messiah.
Messiah? Okay. It was directed by Greg Yatatanes, who is known for House of the Dragon and the TV series Banshee.
Oh. Those are all good shows.
If you didn't know, Banshee's lead star is Homelander.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's written by John Harrison, who is known for Tales from the Crypt, Painkiller Jane, and Creepshow. Not really a big writing list, but
he's got more directing, though, I noticed.
About equal. Yeah.
What do you guys all think of this part 1 of 3?
Ready for more, ready for more.
Yeah. There are aspects I love, and there are aspects I do not particularly care for or understand. But overall, I love it. But I think that's more because of the story, especially Paul and his whole journey throughout this episode is it's rough. I remember reading it the first time I read Messiah Dune, which is what this episode is based on. Just being blown away at the beginning because he's basically crippled by bureaucracy. And I went into it thinking, here's the savior, everything is great.
Yeah, nope. I was like, it was heartbreaking at the end. I'm like, there's what? I thought he was gonna be around forever. I thought he was what's the word, immortalized essentially, and they did a good job of trying to make you think that at first. So yeah, I'll be quiet. I'll let someone else go talk.
Well, Fremen did try to make him a god. It just didn't give him the immortality that comes with it.
You know, for me, it was like I watched this TV series back in 2003 when it first came out.
Yeah,
and back then I was like, this is the best thing I've ever seen from sci-fi. Like it was like a 10 out of 10. That was before I read Messiah.
Oh
yes,
yeah.
At the end of the book, Paul's ending basically made him a god.
Yeah,
but it's like, you know, I watched the show in 2003, didn't read the book till 12 years later.
Oh.
So
and then they come back to watching, and it's like, ooh, oh, it was brutal.
Yeah, this is rough.
That is supposed to equal that.
Oh. Yeah,
it was pretty brutal.
Yeah,
memory of the show did not hold up.
Does it still that way for you?
Like I said, it did not hold up. Like from what how much I enjoyed it in 2003 did not hold up to today.
It was a different time. Yeah.
And believe it or not, it won the Emmy that year for outstanding special visual effects.
Oh yeah, the effects back then were
woo.
It was crazy, like how good we thought they were.
It's light years beyond what they did 3 years previously with Frank Herbert's Dune. That the special effects for it were just utterly atrocious.
Soundstage, yeah, you can definitely tell that they were, yeah.
You know, but this the biggest weak part for me in the visual effects, I'd have to say, is going to be Edric, the Guild Navigator. And it's just it's the surface, the skinning that they did on him. The animation itself was okay.
Honestly, I'd say the Sandworm was worse than the Navigator. And no anything wrong with the Navigator, it just felt wrong. Like they did him wrong.
Yeah.
I'd say
I
the
didn't
design.
mind the
of the worm.
design. I didn't mind the design, honestly. I think the special effects don't hold up, but the
Oh,
design I
definitely.
didn't mind because I have David Lynch's Navigator stuck in my head, and I'm
Oh,
like, I
God.
much
Right.
prefer Goldfish
like-
Boy as
Yeah.
opposed to Giant Blob.
Yeah.
For the most part, this description of Edric, or what we see it depiction of a Guild Navigator, really does work for me with the description from the book. My issue
Right.
with my design issue that you probably didn't hear me. My design issue in this show is the worm. The worm's design is just. I'm sorry. It's like they watched. They were enamored with
Tremors.
xenomorphs. Like a combination between the creatures in Tremors and a xenomorph, because it's got that mouth within a mouth, look going with these worms, and I'm just like,
one word, like singular mouth worm. That's how it was described in books and had been portrayed in like adaptations before this one. So just keep it that way. But maybe they were just trying to go, like you said, with that whole aliens thing. Who knows?
yeah.
Who knows?
I mean, it was Sci-Fi Channel probably around that time. Didn't they have the Tremors TV show? Or was that a few years later?
Yeah, they did around that
I
time.
think they
So
already
it
had it
may have
then,
been
yeah.
reused tech. Just
Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if they reused the same set pieces.
well, they reused quite a few actors. Corba was bothering me, and I'm like, why is Corba's voice so familiar? I went and looked it up. He played Dr. Kynes in the original Dune for
Oh my
sci-fi.
God.
They just shaved his head.
Yeah.
That's it.
And I
No,
pointed
like
out
that's why.
I
That's
pointed out earlier,
funny.
the actor who plays Hasselmer Fenring in Dune, the 2000 Dune, he ends up playing just a one-line Fremen lieutenant at the very beginning of this episode. He's the one who tells Commander Farrell that his son, he's been injured, and then Farrell goes off running to find his son. That's the only line that guy had, and I'm like, he looks familiar. He's got a very distinctive look. If you look him up, it's I didn't write his name down. Never mind.
And I think this is like the golden era of sci-fi.
Yeah, Miroslav Taborsky is his name. Well, they're filming this in the Czech Republic, so that's where a lot of the actors, and I even think the director might be from the Czech Republic. I could be wrong, but most of the actors in this miniseries, just like the previous one, are Czech Republic. As you can tell with the accent, most of them tend to.
Yeah, I noticed that a little bit. It was a little off, but
you get that. You get that twang every now and then. You're like, oh, okay.
And at home, everybody, sorry about the fireworks. It's the night before Memorial Day. I've got a neighbor who's having fun with fireworks. If you hear him, I'm sorry about it. We will try to mute if it does get really bad and try to edit around it. So please hope
I just assume
enjoy.
he had Chitty Chitty Bang Bang back there.
You guys ready to dive right in?
Sure.
Let's go.
Right. Well, the first question we have is, of all the changes from the source material, what are some you enjoyed and what are some you disliked? I'll let Jen go.
Well, maybe not.
Oh, no, I'm just playing.
She's done laughing.
No. It's well, I read the book first and then this, so it's a little bit different. I'll let somebody else go. I'm sorry. Go ahead. You'll go ahead.
There's one thing I could say I really liked. In the book, Paul's not there when Chaney dies. He comes in after her death, and I like that this version of Paul and this version of Chaney got to see each other one last time before
they say goodbye. Yeah. It was also kind of fast paced for me. Like in the book, like things just seem to be going. I know because it's a mini series or whatever, but like it just seemed so fast paced. Like episode one ended like on a really high note. Like it was good because like he walks off in the desert, and that's where they can progress to the next thing. But at the same time, I was like, this didn't seem to be like Paul, like you wanted to see him a little bit more in his glory days, I guess, before he went off and to become the preacher. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. I was just like, oh man, that kind of sucks. Anyway, but yeah, I guess it's
for me. I think one of the things I really enjoyed was having a little bit more of a Leto in a vision role. You know, there's more of it in the series than there is in the book. It's very brief in the book. We have a little bit more of it with James McAvoy as Leto, and I enjoyed that sort of whole vision thing Paul was going through with you know, that. So
That's actually one of my things I disliked for the episode.
Oh,
really, I think
Yeah.
it bridged the two nicely
My
because I
issue
know
with
what's
it
coming. So
is
I mean,
there was a reason why Paul only ever saw one child, Ganima. He
Mhm.
never saw Leto because Leto's an oracle, and oracles don't see oracles through Prussians. They can't, and so he never saw his son, you know, that way. And so, and they even that's one of the things where I was before we recorded. I was telling you, if they had left out a line of dialogue, I wouldn't have had a bigger problem with it. If they'd simply left out the line, "I never saw children, just a child," I wouldn't have a problem with them including James McAvoy as Leto in this episode. But it doesn't make sense. Why didn't you see one child? Why didn't you see one of the children? Because they're an oracle, and that person you're now seeing in totally other visions. So is the writer telling me he didn't see Ganima, the one who's not an oracle? Why didn't he
Basically,
see her?
yeah.
They left the internal logic out and kind of lost it for me with that, you know, with that change.
Given the writer's like short resume, I kind of feel like he did kind of half-ass this a little bit.
Oh. Well, I guess the biggest change probably is like the eyes, right? That the Fremen blue, like what's going on? Like that's kind of a thing. Like I don't know.
Well, they don't have the glowing blue eyes like they did with the previous show
Right.
that they did.
Honestly, it came out better that way.
yeah,
Yeah,
I
I
think
think
it
so.
did too.
It
Honestly,
was a change, but
It
yeah.
it was a
aged a
little
lot
more
better.
subtle.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
aged a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody here that's supposed to have the eyes of a god is wearing a blue contact, but it's only covering their pupils and iris,
Yep.
not the
Mhm.
entire sclera, not the sclera like they did with in the previous movie. You know, they wore clear but UV colored eye contacts that covered their entire eye. They
Mm-hmm.
could have
Right.
just had them wear blue colored contact lenses that covered the entire eye, because they went ahead when Paul loses his eyesight, when his eyes get burned out by the Stoneburner, they have him, Alec Newman, wearing black full eye contacts.
Which makes no sense.
Okay.
When literally in the first scene of the show, you see the guy with literally burnt out eye holes,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and then Paul has black. Like, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a little different.
Speaking
And-
of eyes, the Gola's eyes really bothered me. I mean, they made no attempt to make them look metallic. I mean, you contacts, something to make his eyes distinguished.
I honestly didn't even notice.
Yeah, he's
I'm like,
supposed to have
yeah, the whole
robot
book,
eyes.
they're metal eyes.
Yep.
So they
Yeah.
look metallic.
And
I mean, they
think
made no effort, and that bugged me the entire
I,
time.
I haven't looked up any pictures of Robert Adderton. I think that's his first name, of Adderton. What he normally looks like, to see what color eyes he has. But I noticed that Duncan in this has like light gray eyes or steely gray eyes, so he might be wearing contacts to turn his pupils and irises to steel colored as an attempt, but I can't tell because I haven't seen the actor's natural eyes.
Yeah, I
Um,
didn't see a big difference between Dune 1, Duncan Idaho's eyes, and his eyes.
Mm-hmm.
Enough that says Gola. I mean, you have data on Star Trek The Next Generation.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, you
Yeah.
just throw some
with
contacts
colored
in,
eyes.
make an
Yeah.
effort.
Yeah.
It would look weird and odd, and at least I can go, okay,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
I
you can
gotta
tell
He's
he's
wonder-
Gola.
other. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you guys like when Paul cried at the end, or did you guys not? Because it was different than the book, because he didn't really do that. Like he showed definitely more like Glenn was saying, like emotion, like with Shawnee died, because he was there and like he cried and whatever. I think it's probably that probably fit. I mean, I know that it's not written that way. It's not canon that way in the book, but I think it's I kind of like him showing because he was so close to her, and it definitely was poignant. And I think it's something that like a younger Paul would do, or something
Yeah.
like that. Like it kind of threw it back to not
didn't-
Muad'Dib, but like Paul Atreides. I don't know. It just
I
kinda
didn't
like
have a
that.
problem with him shedding water for the dead.
I didn't either. That made sense because
Yeah,
he's
me
shedding
either.
life for the dead. I agree with that. I'm glad we're all in agreement with that, and that makes me
Hmm.
happy. Okay, good.
Another thing I disliked, and it all has to do with casting.
Mm.
I can understand the idea of casting Susan Sarandon to be in your miniseries.
I
It's a
didn't.
great stunt casting to do.
Mm-hmm.
But putting her in the role of Wencesia,
Mm-hmm.
Princess Wencesia Corino,
Mm-hmm.
was the wrong place to put it. She should have played Lady
yeah.
Jessica.
I thought she would have been great as Lady Jessica too. I really wasn't. I
Agreed.
didn't like her
Yeah.
that much. Yeah, as
Leave-
yeah, I know.
Leave
I agree.
Borg Queen, Alice Krieg out and put Sarandon in. Because, all right, here's a question for you guys. Why did Paul marry Irulan?
Political.
For the throne.
Yeah,
It's
because
because she was the oldest child.
Mm-hmm.
He wouldn't have married the younger child. He would have married the oldest child to have a better claim to the throne.
Mm-hmm.
Yet here we have Susan Sarandon being 27 years older than Julie Cox. Susan Sarandon is playing Wencesia. Julie Cox is playing Irulan. And Irulan's younger sister is Wencesia, but played by somebody 27 years older.
Yeah, they changed it a little bit. Yeah, as
A
far as
little
that
bit. That's
no, it's a lot. Yeah,
that's like swapping me for my dad in a role.
yeah.
Okay, that's
You know-
the age difference between me and my father.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I was just looking up the casting differences here, and definitely not the same actors for Jessica or
Nope.
Duncan.
Or Stilgar or Duncan.
Yeah, it's like I was trying to think back to when we watched other Dune series. I'm like, these people don't look really that familiar. Thinking back on it,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
they could have cast Susan Sarandon because they changed the actress,
Yeah.
like you said.
It was an
She
option.
would- is she actually even naturally has the hair color there that Jessica is supposed to have in the book?
Redhead. Mm-hmm.
The only thing
Auburn
I
red.
question with that is budget. I'm not sure they could afford to have her on set nearly as much.
Oh, for like a longer role, like giving her that billing of
Yeah.
yeah.
See, I haven't watched the next two yet since they were on originally, so I don't remember how much they had Alice Krieg in there.
I can't remember how much
Jessica.
Jessica's in the next one comparatively. I know she
Yeah,
plays a bigger part in
She
Yeah,
does.
Children.
She's
Yeah.
hooked up with Irulan and they're sort of teamed together to try and protect the kids.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
she has quite a bit of screen time.
Mm-hmm.
And
You
then
know,
there's also the question of somebody 37 playing a 16 or 18-year-old.
I mean, have you never seen a teen comedy high
Yeah.
school film?
I mean,
Yeah,
yeah,
I
I
know a
know
little bit too.
Charisma Carpenter
Yeah.
was. I know Charisma Carpenter was 30 when she played. What's her
Yeah.
name on Buffy? What was her character on Buffy?
Oh, I didn't watch enough Buffy. Hold on.
That's
Now,
been
now I
really-
got to
it's
think
been
back.
forever.
You're making my brain hurt.
That's not hard, Bill.
Yeah, I
I
know.
have to look it up.
Okay,
Don't rub
glad
it
you
in.
caught that. But yeah, Hollywood needs to get away from casting actors way older than the part that
Cordelia
they're supposed to-
Chase.
Cordelia.
Chase.
Cordelia,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
thank you. Yeah, I knew it was something C, but I couldn't remember what. It gets old, and I'm not even going to accuse them of age, of casting somebody too old for the part for the next two episodes, because I'm just under the assumption they aged the characters up significantly, because you can't do what you did in the book with 9-year-olds. You can't have the conversations that they had in the book between 9-year-olds. It's just they can't do it. It just wouldn't work. So
I mean,
But-
you've clearly not seen the show Shameless, so
Well,
one
yeah.
episode,
No.
one episode of it. That's it.
Carl rules.
exactly.
I'm just saying.
So
for me, I'm thinking of changes I liked in the show, and I can't really think of any off the top of my head. Changes I didn't like is like at the very end, Paul went in for his super speed stab at the face dancer instead of throwing the knife like he's supposed to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
And that super speed thing didn't work. It
Yeah.
Well, especially when the face dancer just bragged about how fast he can actually move.
Right.
It sort of made
Exactly.
it moot. Like, really? I guess you don't move that
But-
fast, my friend.
Yeah.
and
Well, you got to wonder whether or not a face dancer's ever actually seen the weirding way being used. Maybe, maybe not.
yeah, they
Might not
have.
know quite exactly how fast a Bene Gesserit or a
Mm-hmm.
VG trained person can move.
Mm-hmm.
I do think they should have used him throwing the dagger too.
Other changes, like you mentioned them briefly about the change in the prescience part with Paul and his son Leto. First thing right off the bat was he said something along the lines of, "I can't wait till my son's born" or something.
Yeah.
And that just
Yeah.
felt way off. Like, you don't even know you have a son in the book. Like,
Yeah, you
that-
just know you have a child.
Yeah.
You weren't aware that there were two. Mm-hmm.
yeah. I mean, sure, you might assume he might be his son, but I'm pretty sure they know in this world
Mm-hmm.
or have ways of knowing.
Well, he didn't see twins, but Johnny knew she was having twins.
That's right. She did.
This isn't the Star Wars universe where, they have no prenatal health care at all, because how they didn't know they were having twins in that movie, that's beyond me.
Yeah.
Above my
And
pay grade.
The biggest thing is, like, this episode really did feel rushed. Like,
Yeah. I
felt
agree
like
with that.
they could have easily have upped it 45 more minutes and it felt a little bit better.
Yeah.
It's like they didn't have, and it's like they wouldn't have had, it's not like they didn't have time to do that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Dune Messiah does deserve more than a 90-minute
Yeah.
runtime.
It felt so rushed. It's like you see Bijaz once or twice, and all of a sudden he's at the end and he just gets killed by Duncan.
Mm-hmm.
It's like he had barely a role compared to the book.
And the way he died, the way Bijaz died, I think is entirely the reason why they didn't have Paul throw the dagger. Because having two daggers thrown within 5 minutes apart, and one death, and then the next
I see what you're
Tlalatsu
saying.
dies.
I get your saying.
Now, granted, they shouldn't have had Duncan throw the dagger, because I don't think that's how Duncan did it in the book.
Nope.
No,
Then she just stabbed Bijaz.
Stabby stab.
Yep, you stabbed him.
He just went all IEL on him.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
But John Wick would disagree about that many thrown knives. I'm just saying.
Yeah. I can't recall. Did they kill the navigator in the book?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I couldn't remember if they did or not.
Yeah.
What was it? Cravo?
Edric was killed. Reverend Gaius Helen Mullion was killed.
Oh yeah, she was.
Yeah.
And
I thought she was gonna live forever too. When she was killed off, I was like,
What's
what?
that other
I wasn't
guy?
sad, but
Kravos or something like that. I had to look up his name, trying to figure out who he was. The bald guy.
Korba.
Oh,
Korba.
Corbus.
Korba.
Yeah, Korba.
He was the head priest.
He was like so barely there throughout the whole show that I'm like, who the hell is that bald guy getting thrown in the casket?
I think
Dr.
he got more
Kynes.
screen time being killed
yeah.
than he got previously in the rest of the episode.
I had to skim all the way back to the beginning to see where he was. He had like 2 or 3 lines of dialogue, then 2 or 3 somewhere else, and all of a sudden he's being dragged. Like, why is this guy important? Why is he there?
Yeah.
Well,
And-
speaking of everybody getting killed, I was honestly, I didn't like the fact that order came from Paul in the show, because that was straight up Aaliyah after Paul was already gone. And I think that shows her sort of beginning of her downward arc.
Yeah, if I remember correctly in the book, Paul specifically orders that
Not
those two, that the Reverend Mother and the
He does.
Guild Navigator, are not to be killed.
Yep.
And crazy little Alia has them killed anyways. Stilgar's more than happy to do it because he's bloodthirsty.
Oh, speaking of Aaliyah, there's one change there that's actually probably good for TV. They didn't have her completely naked during the fight.
Yeah, that was nice.
Yeah.
They had her get naked after she started fighting.
After she beats the stuff, she's like, rips her clothes off for joy. I'm like, that that's a different reaction to being super excited about what you just did.
Mm-hmm.
Go
And
for it, I guess.
it's like they kind of missed the whole idea of what was going on with there, but then again, it's Frank Herbert. It's hard to kind of convey what was really going on in her head
That's
during
true.
this.
Right.
That's it. Yeah.
Like, why was it important enough to show it to begin with? If if you're not going to go into why she was in that mentality, why even bother with showing that scene?
Because they
And-
wanted to have a fit actress do some dance moves on the screen.
Yep.
Well, I wasn't mad at it visually, but story-wise, yeah, I absolutely was like, you're not really going into the mindset, which is what starts her down a road that you're going to follow. So I think a little bit more of that would have been great.
I think
I
it was
mean,
just like,
we
oh
ha-
yeah,
we
we
have
want to show her a little bit, like with her little nude scene. So they just had to do that for audience.
I mean,
appeal.
like right away in Children of Dune, the novel, we have them talking about the Jum Habar, or whatever it's called. I can't pronounce it right now. Yeah, and about not being animals, and here she is, like literally like rutting in, in heat almost, and that's what the whole scene was about. And she's becoming an animal is what they're trying to insinuate with that,
right?
and that's why she's becoming downward spiral. But they didn't really expand on that in Messiah very well. Like, I don't feel like she had that much screen time in this episode either.
No,
because she has
didn't.
a lot coming up.
Yeah, they're trying
Yeah.
to like focus on the downward. I think the downward descent of Paul and everything, and then they're going to go to what is happening afterwards with Aaliyah, so that way the audience can be shocked. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah. But it's like, imagine how much more story we could have got for Paul or anyone else if they just removed that one fight segment that really served no purpose except for a little skin on daytime TV, which can't really show much of anything. They can get more on HBO or Cinemax.
I do appreciate them not pushing the Benny Jesuit incest line. I really appreciate that, because in the book that just
It was
icked me out.
It was very
They're
icky.
like,
I
yeah,
will
no,
not have your
no.
children. Like, okay, calm down. No, gross.
Well, I mean, the Benny Jesuit were straight up talking about how do we get Paul with his own sister, and it's like,
true.
Yeah.
yeah.
Even right after that fight, after her workout fight thing, when Paul's up and wraps that around her, she's leaning in, talking to him just a little bit closer than I was comfortable with the actress leaning in towards his face.
Yeah.
I was just like, why are you leaning in that close? Like you're going for a kiss? Ew, don't.
That's gross. That's your brother. Don't be weird.
Please don't.
Don't be a creep.
Your name is not
Please.
Cersei.
But yeah,
Cersei
like,
and Jamie to come back.
I just can't think of many good changes. I could think of good changes I could add to the show, but that's a little 20 years too late for that now.
Yeah.
Move on?
Sure. The second question of the night. How well did the show interpret the appearance and nature of the costumes, props, scenery, and creatures, practical and CGI effects, and or music? How did you feel about the music?
So the music was good.
Yeah.
I like the music. That was actually pretty good. I was like, all right, like that works for me. So I thought that was really good. I think that like kind of the visual cinematography was like okay, like the way that they shot the scenes I thought was pretty good, but I didn't like some of the effects. So that's kind of how I'm going to take on that. So it goes music, cinematography, like effects, but the effects even aren't really that bad. I mean, obviously compared to like the original Dune, but that's kind of how the tier system goes for me as far as those three things. Yeah, essentially music was good, best.
Yeah, the worms were a letdown. I'll agree. I think we can all agree on that. It could have stuck with the original design, in my opinion. It doesn't make me dislike the movie. It's just something that just makes me, when I see it, go ick and move on. Costumes, some of them were great. Some of them not so much. We didn't have the Doughboys this time, which made me happy. Those Sardaukar freaking Doughboy hats drive me insane every time I watch the original.
Well, we did get one briefly.
Yeah, he was in the
On
background.
Unsolicited Secondus.
Yeah, I think you're right. I remember seeing black and purple. Maybe I blocked it out on purpose.
Am I still the only one who isn't bothered by the Reverend Mother's cornet style headpiece she wears?
Yeah, but there was there's always some headpiece of the Reverend Mother, but that one was bad. Yeah,
her headpiece always has reminded me. I had to look it up to see what which nun order it was, but the sister or the Daughters of Charity, I think it's called. Everybody remember the old TV sitcom? It's before our time, but I'm sure you've heard of it, The Flying Nun.
Yes.
Yes.
I've heard of it. I haven't
She
seen
wore a thing, or the headdress that they wear in the Daughters of Charity.
I'm gonna look.
What she had. It's called a cornet, and that headdress that she wears as a nun in that show is what I kept thinking of every time I see the Reverend Mother hat with those big ridges, those wings on them. What gets me though is when we see the Fremen, Reverend Mother, who's got that pullover cowl that's got those ridges on it. She looks like some kind of bird, like a fowl or a dinosaur or something with these crests on the top of her scalp. And it just like, that looks weird. I mean, I get that they're doing that as a nod to the Bene Gesserit Reverend Mothers. At least that's my assumption, but it looks goofy on that lady. Thankfully, we only see her for one scene and then it's done. You guys like the music? I like the music, but not for this show.
Okay.
Music didn't seem. It felt off.
Oh, now, I liked it. Okay.
It felt off for this show, for this program. But the only part that I liked was the really pomp and circumstance style horns during the opening credits. It felt really majestic, and it was like, okay, they're going for the majesty of the empire and the Imperium here, so that's what that's tied to. For the most part, it felt like it was the wrong movie we were watching the music in. For me,
honestly, I'm gonna be honest. Everything is a little colored for me now because I've seen Denis Villeneuve do something so good that everything looks just a little less awesome.
Yeah,
from my past having to do with Dune. So I'm gonna admit there is a little bit of prejudice there thrown in because I still have that fresh iteration running through my mind on how good it could be.
Just think, maybe if this next one does as well as the first one did, he'll get to do the third movie he wants to do, and that'll cover Dune Messiah and do it right. That's what he wants to do. Is he wants to do a third movie.
As far as music, I'd say like the end of the episode you kind of like did well for like soundtrack. Costuming kind of felt all over the place. Like after the Freeman fight at the beginning, they're like showing this like market thing before Aaliyah is talking, and it looks like medieval Europe or Britain and not Dune, if that makes sense.
I think it's supposed to show that the changing of the environment has changed their entire society and not necessarily in a good way.
I get that, but it also feels like it went too far, that they're not showing the clash of the natives versus the people who aren't native and everyone else, to make sense.
Okay, no, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
I can see where you get that.
It's like I expect the nobility to wear one set of clothing. I want to say
stick true to the book will be a unitard for most of the books,
right?
Men
Chani's outfits just felt all kinds of off in this.
Yeah, at one point she looked like Gold Moon from
the leather bandana thing.
She had that furry headband.
She looked like Gold Moon. I'm like, oh my God.
She did.
That kind of like really took me out when I saw that.
Yeah.
When she came in. When she came against the princess with that outfit, like, what the hell is she wearing?
Yeah.
It felt very buckskin sort of. Yeah, almost native or tribal in some sense.
Yeah.
In like the wrong way.
I don't mean in the Fremen way. That would have made sense.
Yeah, I'm looking at that scene here. It's just there's all kinds of random incongruities like that in costuming, and yet it's almost like whoever was the costume designer went to the Middle East once, but they were actually in like I don't know. They weren't actually in the Middle East. They were in like Mexico or something. I don't know.
And thought they were in the Middle East.
Yeah.
Mm.
I think
Just
they might have looked at a book about people from different parts of the world, and that's
Mhm.
their extent.
Mm-hmm.
Something
That would
like
make
that.
sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or like they visited the whatever place in like California, like that district. You know, that version of Chinatown.
Right.
But the upper side.
Or they just went to Burning Man and they just saw some people in weird ass shit.
Well, I
and
mean,
they
some of
were
those
like,
costumes might have been better, but
yeah.
You guys might laugh at this. I think the costume was better in Frank Herbert's Dune that we watched last fall than what we saw in this.
I can agree on that. Overall,
Okay.
to a
I would say
point.
the costuming
did-
was better. Yeah.
Did anybody else think Harkonnens every time they saw Duncan Idaho or Hate
Yes.
wearing that thing with the ridges?
Mm-hmm.
You know that it's
Mhm.
from
Yeah.
like his shoulders up, and it had all those ridges. All I kept seeing was like Harkonnen.
Can I tell you guys a
From
secret? I
David
hope
Lynch's.
that they do Jason Momoa when he becomes. I'm really interested to see him because there's never been a Gola interpretation of that I've seen on screen yet of Duncan Idaho that matches what I felt from the book. I have not like. Hopefully he does good with that because they need to change him just a little bit. Like, and I don't know if the actor, I don't know if it's the actor or the direction, but I've not been fully happy with any that I've seen of that character after the Talaxi situation. So hopefully we're gonna get that if he makes Dune Messiah Denis. But anyway, yeah. I've always not paid attention to any adaptation I've seen of that character because if I do, it'll piss me off. Like it's never done right. Like so like certain things of Paul or certain things of Ali or certain things of like Paul's mother or the Reverend, the guys. I'm like, okay, certain people have gotten that right, even in like the bad adaptation of stuff. Like, you know what I mean? But yeah, Talaxiu, Jason Momoa, really looking forward to that because I've never seen an interpretation where any of that's made me happy. None of it's good. I don't like it.
Set design as far as the show goes, looking through some various scenes here, there's parts where it's clearly a set in a studio.
Yeah.
Other areas, it's clearly a green screen. And instead of doing a set, they just green screen the set, which in a lot of cases didn't make any sense. Like one's literally a hallway with glass above them. So it's like they're walking through a greenhouse type thing. It's like
You talking with Jessica and
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
Jessica and
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Gurney.
and it's like
Bernie. Yeah.
you could green screen now if you just did a regular real set and then just green
See-
screen the outside the glass, it'd be one thing. But even the floor looks fake. And like all
think
these
even
years
the-
later didn't age. You
Yeah,
know?
all that water that they were walking past, I think was CG too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just everything felt so CG in the scene that I think the water was.
There are areas where they would have been benefited from a lot of practical effects they just didn't do. Near the end, there's a part where like the sand, the dunes, it's like, why did they just do that out in an actual dune and it looked a billion times better than trying to CGI sand?
Yeah, that was a little bit weird. The desert scenes were a little bit off.
Yeah.
And
The
that
dunes
was,
were really,
yeah.
really high.
Yeah. And it's like, come on now. You had come out with a Phantom Menace by then, so you should have you should know what that looks like and how
As a
it can
matter of
look
fact,
okay.
They didn't have that budget.
No.
Yeah,
Attack of the
there is
Clones is
that.
out by this point.
Yeah.
We've already seen Attack of the Clones by the time we see this. So,
Mm-hmm.
And say what you might, about overuse of CG in that trilogy. There was still some really good CG in those movies.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't like sand. It's so coarse and gets everywhere.
Yeah, I hate sand.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the very last one of the last scenes here. It's like they're showing the temple behind Aaliyah,
Mm-hmm.
and I just don't know what they were thinking in that design. It's like a multi-level pyramid. It has statues on the outside, and the top looks like a butt plug.
There's a I think the bottom.
Oh my god, it does.
Oh, let me go
I
back to it.
didn't notice he said that, and now I'm running it back in my head. I'm going, oh my god,
It's
it does.
like a ziggurat, like
Yeah.
type,
Yes.
like that they tried to go with, like essentially. But then, yeah, hold on, hold on.
Design was there, but the execution was off.
I mean, the lighting was okay in certain instances. I thought they were playing with that. The lighting was pretty okay. But it's just like the CG and effects. So that's why I said like design wasn't that like bad, because the lighting was okay. And sometimes they did really good with shadow play and stuff like that. But yeah. There's a couple of things like, okay, we've seen what really good, I guess, budget. See, of course they didn't have Star Wars budget, but like, other things had been out that I think did relatively better with desert scenes at the time. You guys could have tried harder with the desert. But anyway, let's go here and here or there.
Let's see. I think that pretty much covers a lot of costumes, props, scenery. I think we covered the
Music
navigator
too,
being kind of funky.
Yeah.
Well, if we want to move to the next question.
Yeah.
How well written was the dialogue? Did it adapt the dialogue from the book well? And did the actors deliver those lines well? I see Jen shaking her head. Must have loved it.
It didn't do it for me. I didn't. Well, I'm biased because I read the book, fell freaking in love with the book, and some of the dialogue was really poignant, and there were a couple of scenes that caught it, like Shawnee's death and things like that. But I just didn't feel like the same amount of, like, I used that word before, I'm going to say it again, I'm going to use it here again, is gravitas. I really didn't feel a lot of that was being passed between certain things in the scenes well, in my opinion. I just didn't like that part. No, go ahead, stop there.
Nice.
I can't think of off the top of my head, I read this like last week, if there was any dialogue from the book in the show.
Yeah,
I'm sure there are lines.
There are a couple lines from Paul that are straight from the book, but so help me, that's the only ones I can vaguely remember going, okay, that's straight from the book. Other than that, not so much.
Like, of all the lines to rip off, why not rip off Bijaz's?
Yeah, if you're going to be gesturing. Yeah, I think they tried to like make their own thing, and it rubbed me the wrong way. Like, I didn't enjoy it at all.
It feels like a writer making changes because they can make changes. And it's something I have a complaint with about in a number of adaptations.
It's probably my biggest complaint, because I like the book so much, but like I was like, when I'm watching it, like I'm like, no, I just can't take away from that because I like the book so much. So anyway,
one of the few lines I remember from the book is one of the lines I think they could have dropped and things would have made more sense. That line about I didn't see children.
Yeah. I think we all universally agree on that. I don't think there would anyone that would be like, oh yeah, the dialogue was really great. Like, I don't know. If so, they probably hate the books. I don't know why they're watching the show.
I just don't, thinking about it, I'm not sure if it's a director, producer, writer, who was all involved in this, but it's like, say they were given this project, they wanted to get it done, and they read, say, the book or someone's synopsis, and like, these were the important parts, but those were not the important parts. And I don't know if the writer didn't read the book or he only skimmed it and read those scenes that he's told important.
Yeah.
Because like the prescience thing is pretty major to the whole point of the book.
Right.
Is that they made a huge deal about him not being able to see the navigators or any other oracles. Yeah. And his whole plan was because the other oracles were plotting against him.
And they've entirely left it out.
And they, the doubling down on how he can't see oracles, or hammering in you as you're reading the book, I can't see other oracles, I can't read other oracles, causing Chani to doubt him or whatever. And it's like, they're constantly hammering, and in the end, you're like, oh yeah, he don't even know he had a son.
Yeah.
You know what it feels like? The writing feels like somebody who read the book years ago, thought he could read the cliff notes and go off of that.
Yeah.
Like, I'm familiar with the material. Now let me do a quick rundown of the cliff notes and then
Mhm.
write a script based on it. That's what it feels like.
See, yeah, just that's called not doing your homework.
And like, I don't
Yeah.
want to, harp on this particular writer being like the bad guy here, because we have no idea how the producers or any of the execs at Sci-Fi were.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, stuff could have been
I'm
rewritten
just
from
going off
underneath
how
them.
it felt.
Yeah, yeah.
Good point, Max. That might have been their direction. Like, oh, we really want to create our own thing. Like, just stick to the script. Literally.
Yeah.
Stick to the script. Literally. Say that part. That's why people are going to be watching it. Most people, hello, because people don't start off like, because you have to know really who Paul is and why it's so important that he dies at the end of this episode. And if you didn't know anything about Dune, like, you wouldn't really care about what the heck's going on so much. So anyone that probably would be watching this should be familiar with the story of Dune, with, like, you know what I mean? So that your core audience is who you're pissing off. Like, what are you doing?
Especially since it's on Sci-Fi Channel.
Yes, thank you.
Most of the nerds who watch that channel, at least it always seemed to me, are nerds. They,
yeah.
Although a lot of my nerd friends honestly haven't read these books. I have two separate people, both pretty big nerds, that never got past the Gom Jabbar.
Okay, I would have been a part of that at not too long ago, but it's really
because it was just too. It was too vivid and graphic a description in the book for them, or something. I don't know.
Really?
Yeah, it was too
What?
much for them. It was too much for him to read them, Mark and John, to read, because
interesting,
flesh falling off, charring to the bone. It's like,
I think that's when I got sucked in, honestly.
Yeah! I was going, even though I knew it was because I had seen it, like, or I read it after I seen the Denis, so I knew it was gonna happen. But I was like, I love how they described it in the books as well. It was perfect in my opinion. But and you guys know I'm not that big of a horror fan, so I thought it was okay. But then again, I might be a little biased, so I'm gonna stop there.
That's our horror fan.
Yeah.
Oh, I love horror. Well, Max likes it too.
So. I will say I think Max
a little
is
bit.
a really big horror fan as well, or at least somewhat. Yeah. What I know.
Let's see. Next up, Ted, is what is a scene or sequence you most remembered, enjoyed, or hated in this episode?
My most enjoyed, despite the level of CG and the design that involved with it, I really enjoyed the worm capturing sequence. I think that's probably exactly how it would play out. How you would have to, go about capturing a worm, just the way they did it. I just think that the CG wasn't up to par of what they could have had. And I think they could have spent the money better somewhere else. But I did enjoy those scenes. What I most remembered, there's two. I really remembered Alia's combat practice, because I remembered those spinning discs that she was dodging and then knocking out of the air. And the other scene that stuck in my head, and I couldn't have told you until I rewatched it recently, who the scene was between, but I remember a hand gesture conversation being done with subtitles while they were speaking lines of dialogue over their hand talk, the maiden hand talk. I mean, Benny Gesserit hand sign.
Yeah, it was Irulan talking to Mother.
Yeah, Reverend Mother.
Yeah.
But until I watched it recently, I was like, I don't remember who that scene was. I couldn't even place the scene until until reading the book a week or two ago for the first time since I was in my 20s.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's been a while. I had read it twice, and I have now read it 5 times. Well, 4.5 times.
Okay.
I read it twice, 2.5 times in the last week and a half. So.
Bless you, Max.
I almost say I didn't know what that was. I didn't know if it was a cough or a sneeze, so I wasn't like exactly sure.
Dying here.
No, it was you. We were talking about you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I'm just dying here. That's all right.
Oh,
Yeah.
I thought you said I didn't hear. My apologies. I didn't hear. Okay.
You bring up
Great, now I
Captain
have to
Trips and
replace
look what
somebody else.
happens.
I have to replace somebody else. Oh, you just mean figuratively. Okay.
For me,
Mhm.
honestly, my favorite scene and really stuck out in my mind was probably Paul saying goodbye to Chani.
Yeah.
Close
Um,
second.
yeah, honestly, it wasn't in the books, and I think it was a sort of beautiful nod to the end of, his love. And
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed that scene. It really stuck out to me, and I think it's one that made me actually
Mhm.
feel. I mean, a lot of this first half or part was sort of, okay, just
Mhm.
kind of moving on from point to point because it was moving rather quickly. This one
Yeah.
hit me. This one hit me. So I'm like, all right, yeah, I feel that.
Yeah. I would probably agree with that. Paul, like Chani's death, him saying it, like we talked about this before, like him saying goodbye, even though that's a deviation, of course, from the original of the book. No, like I would probably say that's probably the best. Like there wasn't. Okay, so let me fully describe what I'm about to say. There wasn't a scene that I particularly hated, to answer the question. I probably liked that scene, those scenes with him and Chani the best, comma. As far as hate goes, it's a vibe that I didn't get. It's not a scene that played out to me. It didn't the book made it feel like it was. I've talked about this very briefly with Glenn before. The book made me feel like there was sort of a race between, like, Paul's ascension is in direct contrast to like his children growing, and then he like has to, quote unquote, not really but kind of, go into the desert and die so his children can be born. I found there was an entire, like, when I was reading the books, a thing of like a race against time as the aging father begins to go into the background, and the children, his progeny, is what ends literally the book, is his children being born. And I call it King Salmon because the salmon swimming and dying and spawning, and that's his whole life or whatever. I didn't really get the vibe of the wheel turning. I don't even mean to use a Wheel of Time reference, but like I didn't get the progeny, like the entire, it's called Children of Dune. Like that's literally like what you're supposed to be getting from it, and I just didn't get that vibe. It seemed to be all over the place. Way more than the books. Even though the books had a lot of stuff going on, you kind of understood the track that it was going to take. It was just so shot out like this. I didn't just get, I don't know if I'm not explaining myself correctly, but it's a vibe that I didn't get that you're supposed to take away from the audience that they delivered on well. I didn't get that. So it's not a scene. It's just I just didn't. I just felt sadness at the end, and just like kind of left out, because I wanted to see more of Paul being, in his greatness before the demise, and just it was just kind of all over the place. So that's just where I'm going to end it. I don't know. I'll stop off my soapbox here. I'm not explaining it correctly, but anyway, yeah, I'm quiet.
There's one scene I dislike, but it's for a really petty reason. I was grossed out by the sound design and what you see on screen when Paul's there visiting Othane before the Stoneburner goes off. When he's coughing and spitting out all that phlegm, and I had to mute. I had to mute and look away because it was just too vivid of a sound, and that was something.
That's why I liked it, honestly. I thought that scene was very visceral, and it shows how that mighty warrior had fallen. And I mean, to me, that grittiness and nastiness to it just made it better.
That's fine. It is the same actor who played Othine in the previous trilogy or miniseries. I had to look that up. I wasn't sure. I am wondering what that rope, why he had the cloth, the sling that he had his head in.
If he lays back, he'll drown.
Oh, okay.
And
that makes sense. I've been trying to figure that out. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's why we have him on here. We have somebody who's smart now, finally.
Thank you, Bill.
I don't know about
That's-
smart, but
No,
all
that
right.
makes sense.
The for scene I enjoyed, if you want to call it that. Even as much as I hate the culmination of it, I enjoyed the part where Paul and Leto have that interaction just before he kills the skin or the place dancer.
Okay.
When I'd say rewatching it, seeing Leto actually appear to him was more of a surprise of like, what the hell are they doing? Like
Mhm.
seeing him as an adult, like that's weird, but it's interesting change.
Mhm.
Plus, it's James McAvoy, who is like fantastic. So
Yeah.
Right.
Even when he's
I mean,
12,
the second half of
he
this
looks so young.
mini series, he is so good.
Yeah, he is.
He is just so good
Mhm.
that I think it was nice having him thrown in at the very end there. It did show you there's hope a little bit because at that moment, I mean, all we have is death and despair
Yeah.
in that moment. So I think bridging how, lighthearted the second half starts with the first half ending, with him being there and a visual representation of him kind of worked for me.
Mm.
So I didn't mind it. I liked it.
as far as scene I didn't like at all, I'd say actually the birth scene just didn't feel right to me.
The birth and then the juxtaposition to everybody else dying, or just the birth part?
Just Chani giving birth just didn't
Okay.
sit right.
Mm.
It literally came off as they were trying to make it sexual.
Okay.
Mm.
I think I understand you seeing her gripping the blanket, the sheets and everything.
Just the
it's
whole
a
thing
shot
just
you
felt
see in a sex scene all the time in movies.
yeah.
Yeah.
It just felt off, if that makes sense. And
Yeah.
Mhm.
honestly, I'd say there were a lot of movies with similar scenes like that back in that era.
Okay.
Probably.
Yeah.
Because I remember seeing similar things like that with you know why? And it's
9.5 weeks.
It's because the stuff came out like the thing that just sticks right out in my mind is House of the Dragon, the birth scenes being completely a different experience than what we have in in this. So yeah, it was definitely more like feminized and cutting away and not really even if they want to show a birth scene, like it's not that impactful. Like even if you see her like crying out, it was like Padme, that kind of thing. It wasn't bloody or gory. And now it's like childbirth is like a very, more realistic, I guess, experience of what that's like. I haven't had
it did come off as traumatic, but ecstasy, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Which was probably a very masculine point of view, I guess, which makes no sense.
Compare that to the House of the Dragon childbirth scenes. It's like, no, completely different.
Well,
even
outside of House of the Dragon, there's other birth scenes and other shows that at least show it's not all fun and games.
Yeah.
And it's not. I've been there twice, and I tell my friends, don't look, just don't look.
Even she did like a full bolt upright sit up didn't feel right in ways.
I think what they were going for, honestly, is that this was the culmination of her life and she knew it. So it was a transcending sort of moment for her to finally bring her children into the world, even though knowing it was going to kill her. So for her, it might have had a level of accomplishment. Maybe they were going for that, but I can see where you're coming from, where, some of it was a little off. But I mean, she was spending her entire life and she knew it just to bring these kids into the world. So for a Fremen, I think this was kind of her purpose. And they're a very focused people on their purpose. So I think that's what they were going for, but I think they missed the mark.
And if we get a third part for the new one, if they keep Zendaya, I'm not sure if she's gonna do that scene.
She won't do it like that. I can guarantee you.
Yeah.
She will not do it like that.
Like I just don't feel that actor as doing that one.
I see her doing That
Yeah.
birth death scene, definitely, but probably not.
Yeah,
you know,
just
obviously
not like
not the
that.
way they did it here.
Oh, just
Mhm.
birth in general. Like, I just don't get that vibe from her as a actress.
Probably because you remember her too well from being on Disney.
No, from
No.
Euphoria.
Oh,
Oh, okay.
wow, that show! I never finished season 2. I had to
Yeah.
give up. Season 2 was way too rough for me to continue watching.
It's rough, man.
She's great on that though. What, 2 years in a row she's gotten the Emmy,
Hmm.
I think. I know she won it the first year, but Zendaya is amazing.
I'm not sure.
Plus, they got like a 12-year time gap
Hmm.
to fill in
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
So you think they might recast her?
Maybe the whole cast.
Yeah.
Well, except for
at least
the older people.
The younger
age
people,
'em
her
up.
and Paul.
Hmm.
Recast her and Paul.
Or they could just wait 12 years and that could be a thing.
Well,
I mean, the way the production is.
Yeah.
Everything's hauled off right now. Right now.
Hmm.
well, yeah. I mean, the strike may not be over in 12 years. So.
Let's
Well,
hope
no,
it is.
I mean, it's what, 2 years since the last one came out? Maybe. I mean, it came out.
Yeah, 2001.
Mhm.
The
Yeah.
next one is scheduled currently for November this year, I believe.
2021. Yeah, and I can't wait for the second part. I love it. I love the whole. Anyway, that's getting into something else. So we're going
I'm
back into Disney.
I'm so going to IMAX theater.
Oh,
I
yeah.
didn't for the first one, and
Oh,
I'm
I haven't.
angry at myself.
Yeah, me too.
Ugh.
And I want to
The
see it. I would
entire movie
experience
this
it.
time, the entire film was filmed for IMAX this time,
Yeah.
whereas previously only parts of it were.
Yeah. I'm shoving people out of the way.
I
Okay,
have
I'm
a
getting in
ways
that
to go.
scene.
Yeah.
I have a bit of a ways to go to get to an IMAX theater, but there are some large screen options up here that are close
So-
to being IMAX.
Which of you three is cosplaying as a sandworm when you go there?
Oh, yeah, I'll freaking play as a cause.
Actually,
You know what? I'll just slouch my way in there. I'll be like, I don't care. I'll do it.
I've always wanted to make a still suit. So
yeah,
I don't
that'd
know.
be cool.
Maybe.
You can always throw sand from bags at people as you walk by.
There you go.
I live in Florida. Sand is everywhere. I can
Me
literally walk
too.
down the street and grab some.
Set up a melange stand outside the theater.
There you go. There
That's
you
not
go.
a bad idea.
But in Florida, you never know what you're going to get.
That's true.
Yeah.
It's true.
Question number 5. Who would you call a best and/or worst actor in this episode? And this could include casting choices as well. And Glenn is limited to 3 people.
Good call.
I only ever
Good
give
call.
3 people. I'll let you guys go first.
James McAvoy as Leto. There we go. Done. There we go. It's my favorite for sure. Susan Sarandon. But I can't really I can't really blame her. She did the best she could. I just agree I don't like her in the role as much as I would have thought that I would have. But yeah. So yeah, those are my 2. Kind of because I was like, ooh, looking forward to Susan Sarandon. I didn't.
See, my favorite actor for the episode is, despite the fact that they are entirely way too old to play the character, is Daniela. I'm not sure how to. Where did I write your name? Amavia. Daniela Amavia. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, as Aaliyah. She's totally way off age-wise, but I think she gave the best performance. The only other performance I think that came close was, I'd say actually tied with that, is Barbara Koditova as Cheney.
You keep saying that, and I keep thinking Dick Cheney. I'm sorry. I apologize.
Sorry.
But it's okay.
I used to
shoot
always
me.
say
Don't shoot me.
Chani. I used to always say Chani, but after listening to the narrate audiobooks and they keep saying Cheney,
I'm
and
like,
then in all the movies we've seen recently, it's always Cheney.
Cheney.
Yeah, I know.
No, it's okay.
The worst, this is going to be shameful to say, but Susan Sarandon was the worst performance.
Yeah,
And
right.
she's one of Hollywood's best.
Right. I agree.
Yet she gave the worst.
I'm
And
glad we agree on that.
Edward Atherton as Duncan Idaho was pretty bad too.
Oh well,
Um,
yeah, but I'm biased on that because I never enjoy. I don't know if it's the direction or it's him. Like I'm going to give a slight pass to that because again, I don't see any of them as yeah, right. So yeah, Susan Sarandon for me. But,
yeah.
And I
I
could
think-
go the exact opposite of Glenn. I liked Susan Sarandon more than Chani.
Oh, more
She
than
did-
Chani. Okay.
Yeah, I felt she just came off flat, and they didn't really give the embodiment that actually really were in love in the show for me. Until like
Oh,
maybe when she died, I was like about it.
okay.
And flat's the word I had written down in my notes describing Atherton as Duncan Idaho.
Mm-hmm.
And like, you know, given the script that Susan Sarandon was handed with, I think she did the best she could have done with that role.
Okay. I can
Okay.
see that.
I agree.
I can
For
see that.
me, I'd say the worst was honestly Alice Krieg as Lady Jessica. It just came off wooden. I didn't feel anything at all. Honestly, I love Alec Newman as Paul. Still,
Mm.
He's not
you
bad.
know, I enjoyed him as Paul when he's supposed to be frustrated. I felt that from him. You know, the grief at the end was beautifully done, and the acceptance of his fate, I think, was played really well. I mean, I just really enjoy his performance.
I would also agree with that.
Okay. So we've got some differences and some agreements going on.
Mm-hmm.
Those that are
That sounds
right,
about
and
right.
those that are wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Jen and I are right.
Well, it's more like, yeah, well, I think it's because, and I agree with what Max was saying. I don't know if it's necessarily the actress because she's done so well and she's so seasoned. So maybe it was just, and I'm very keen to put this on writing because of just, the entire show. So I don't know if it was actually her necessarily, but I think it's because going into that, not really knowing much and reading the book first and not coming into this till years later, until very recently when I saw it, I was like, okay, Susan Sarandon, I can vibe with that. And I was like, no, I can't actually. So I think it was more of a letdown in hindsight, actually, for me.
Yeah, I kind of look at it like you have a lot of politic talk going on, and it's like trying to write not Shakespeare, I'm thinking trying to think of the character's name, Sherlock Holmes. But you were a dumbass and trying to write Sherlock Holmes.
Gotcha.
So me writing Sherlock Holmes. Got it.
Like you're trying to do this mystery, and it's like, it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
And repeating the line of plots within plots throughout the show at odd times. Like it's some like big gotcha, like plots within, we understand how plots work.
Like, yeah, we were there for the first movie where there were plots and plots. We get it.
Yeah.
And it goes beyond just saying there's plots within plots. You actually have to have a plot within a plot.
Right.
Jesus, Max.
Well, he's
And we
not
didn't
wrong.
really have one, did we?
Yeah, no, he's right. No, I'm like, wow, okay, yeah, no, I agree. He's
And
not wrong.
to be fair, I think we're all suffering from the Villeneuve blues. That's what I'm calling it.
Listen, I
Watching any
agree.
Dune after this most recent one,
Oh, jeez.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm kind of going
it
backwards.
shades
I mean,
everything.
I
So,
mean, thinking about it, what is the plot in the book? It's the
King
I can never.
Salmon.
Yes, no. I'm trying to think what the hell they're called, the Travaxi or whatever the hell they're called.
Taloxiu?
Yeah, their plot when the
Tleilaxu.
plot is to effectively create the Duncan Idaho with the memories.
Mm-hmm.
That's their plot within the plot.
Mm-hmm.
All with the point of getting Paul to be like, yeah, I'll give you Cheney's dead body so you can bring her back for me as a goal.
right.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's the plot within the plot, and they just completely, their plot within the plot is we're gonna blind Paul and kill his kids.
Yeah.
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 I mean, you're not wrong.
That's true.
It's weird. I loved this so much when I first saw it and it first came out.
Looks like you and Max had the same kind of feeling. I
Well-
didn't have that. I read the books. I saw Denis, then I read the books, Then I went backwards in time to this. So it's like I really went
It's-
backwards. I mean,
It's still better than David Lynch's Dune.
yeah. Y'all messed me
Yeah.
up
And
with that.
better
Y'all
than
messed me
anything
up.
David Lynch would have done if he had tried doing Dune Messiah.
Oh God, please, thank God we don't have that. Thank God. Oh yeah.
I thank the gods every day for that.
Yeah, that's true. So I'm just sit through that. Mm.
Yeah, so I think we got our actors. What's next?
Themes. Glenn's
Oh.
favorite question
Yeah,
is
sometimes.
the themes present in the episode. Which one caught your attention? What did they? You think about those themes and are they relevant to the books or events happening in real life?
The
You guys
cycle of
first.
life, birth, and redeath. The circle of life. Even though it wasn't, like I said, carried away the way I wished it would have. But like obviously, the king, the Paul has to become godlike and then go into a descent into a relative. He's lost everything. He's lost Chani. He's going to begin to lose his hold on everything as he ascends godhood at the same time, and he's maybe going to die, question mark, at the end of this episode, being cast out. He loses his eyes, he loses his sight, and then but he has his kids, so it's like it's kind of that birth, it's death cycle of living. You have to win something to gain something. You can't have, like, you have to trade something off for everything you get in life, and this is kind of the life cycle of what a human is supposed to be. Like you're talking about, like Chani's whole life, she dies as she's literally giving birth. I mean, that is the most on the nose thing I could ever think of, like as far as her life cycle goes. So I mean, that's just it, that's what it was all about in the book, though. That's kind of literally the point. So yeah, it's very on the nose.
Speaking about that, when you mentioned the whole trout life cycle, like
Yes.
our trout in our reality,
Salmon,
that never,
yeah.
King salmon, you die as soon as you give birth to kids. Like,
I never made that connection.
Oh my God,
to that in the book with Paul, and then you considering the sand trout in the books with the worms, like,
yeah,
never made that literal connection like you made right there.
It's literally fish, but it's sand trout and the salmon of the human being spawning
Makes
and
sense.
dying.
It's been fish this whole damn time.
It's
Yep.
been
Fish in the desert.
full of water in the desert.
Oh, don't forget the sand plankton that are there too.
That's right. That's right.
What the sand trout live off of or come from, I'm not sure
Mhm.
which is the case.
It's literally so king salmon trout. That's all I could think of in my mind.
What'd you latch on to, Max?
Oh, is being rushed a theme?
Yes.
Agree heartily, sir. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, this episode was so all over the place. I can't think of much for themes. I can think of a dozen for the books.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
me too.
I mean, plots within a plot, I guess, is a theme. They repeated enough.
Well,
it's right. He's right. He's right.
I'd start off by, I don't know if they actually say it in the book or the show, but it boils, one of the main morals of the story is people are not gods and gods are not governance. And think for yourself. And most importantly, and Herbert himself said this in so many words, beware of charismatic leaders. They should come with a warning label on their forehead. His exact words, with a warning label on their forehead. Yeah, charismatic leaders are dangerous, but any other themes that anybody latched onto?
Just the love and loyalty from Paul and Chani. I mean, when you focus on that story, the opportunity to have a child with Irulan, and he's like,
I was just thinking, they literally used the word cuckold in this episode.
Yeah.
Twice.
Several times.
Yes.
Which I was surprised to hear on TV.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the conversation where Irulan threatens to cuckold him, that was actually done to Paul's face in the book.
Yeah.
In the show, it's between Chani and her. So
Mhm.
Yeah.
I found that a little weird, but like, okay.
Well, 2 scenes later, there's a knife to her throat. So
Yeah, well, yeah, 100%. When she found out she had been given her a contraceptive that was
Mhm.
basically, we thought it was killing her, but extended her life apparently.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah.
it only extended her life because if they had given birth, she would probably been killed earlier.
Mhm.
Assassination
She probably
attempts
would
and
have
all that
died.
fun stuff.
Yeah.
And loyalty is definitely there's a quote that I'd written down here from when I was reading or listening last week about loyalty. And loyalty is a valued commodity. It can be sold, not bought, but sold.
Hmm.
And I'm like, yeah, you
That's
can't
true.
really, you can sell your loyalty, but you can't necessarily be sure that you're buying someone's loyalty.
Mm-hmm.
I was about to say, if
'Cause
you're paying
you-
for it, there's no way you can guarantee loyalty. I mean,
That's right.
Right, right. But
Well,
if you're
that happens.
selling your loyalty, you know that they've bought your loyalty. They don't know it, but if you
Mhm.
sold your loyalty, you know it.
Mm-hmm.
At least as far as you're able to be loyal.
There's a scene in Children of Dune in the book where Aaliyah is talking to some guy about his loyalty or something,
Mm-hmm.
and she literally just offers to pay him money to be loyal to her
Mm-hmm.
because she has all the money.
Mm-hmm.
And as he's walking away, apparently he utters under his breath about her being a witch, and she just has him cut.
Yes.
Was that Javid? No,
can't
Javid
remember
was
his
the
name.
guy she was
Javid.
sleeping with.
Yeah, no.
Was her lover,
Someone
her
else, yeah.
lover. And Javid got cut, except Javid is in the show. Javid is a little boy that Korba tells, she comes up and tells Korba the Stoneburner is set at Othaim's house. And then he tells him, okay, go do this, Javid. And he calls the little boy Javid. So the name Javid got kept,
That's
but the
right.
character got dropped.
Got weird. Yeah, that's weird.
Oh, when I say he got cut, I mean he got unalived in the book.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Because he was like trying to think what they call illegally transferring items that he's not supposed to be.
Okay.
pirating, you
Yeah.
And something like that. Smuggling is the word I was looking for.
Yes.
He was smuggling something to somewhere for whatever reason, got caught, and he was the allies of somebody not supposed to be allies with or whatever, plotting against her, but she was going to buy his loyalty,
Mhm.
and he sold it to her, but then, like you said, you can't guarantee that loyalty when he's talking about he wants that witch dead.
Mm-hmm.
Like 2 seconds later, and he gets unalived.
Mm-hmm. He almost made it out of the throne room too.
Yeah. That was
almost
a pretty dumb move on his part.
It was dumb.
about this close.
Yeah.
Yeah. Another religion plays a big part throughout.
Yes.
That's an undeniable theme. Even not just the whole idea of gods. People are not gods, and religion's not government. Religion
Well, the
itself
religious-
is just
the
just
religious
a major
side.
part.
We lost a little bit on that Karos guy when he was killed because they changed why he betrayed Paul. He was supposed to be trying to make him a martyr, but in the show they made him straight out just he didn't like Paul for whatever reason. Killed his family or whatever. So in the book, he wanted to make Paul into a martyr to enhance the religion and the jihad, whereas in the show it was just he wanted Paul dead.
Yeah.
So they kind of went away from the religious side of martyring Paul.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
So-
it's funny that Paul ended up doing exactly that himself.
Yeah.
On the religious side, I feel like we missed a lot of Paul being able to see without being able to see in the show.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
he
we
made
got
a
it for a little
big,
bit.
yeah,
Yeah.
he made a huge point in the book. Like, I'm flying a copter blind.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
And
something I can't
some
see.
scenes I wish
Corba's
they- yeah.
and the whole thing with Corba's trial.
Yeah,
You
he
know,
called
he
out people in the
described it.
stands.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Told him
You're
what they were
wearing
wearing.
blue with
Wearing-
gold, and it's
Yeah.
dusty. You've always been untidy.
Yeah.
You know.
And that all enhances his martyr and godhood type status.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then the sacrificing to the dunes as a freeman is supposed to, like, really doubled down on his Messiah,
Mhm.
murdering himself.
We're gonna get really into religious overtones when he becomes John the Baptist later. But
Yeah,
I mean,
100%.
super duper. But yeah.
Definitely.
Mm.
Anything else anybody wanted to bring up? What do you guys? I got some pushback yesterday. I think it was when I said in the one chat that Paul's a monster and that he's got what 61 billion people, 90 planets
Give or take.
sterilized, and
Only.
500 or more planets demoralized. As
I mean,
they
he
put
could
it.
have gone much worse if he had, stayed alive and been Muad'Dib longer. I can imagine.
But doesn't that basically make Paul Muad'Dib the most bloodied
That we know
character
of
in science
yet.
fiction and fantasy?
Yeah.
In science fiction and fantasy, up to this
I think
point,
Leto takes that.
Up to this point, I mean, he makes Chief Palpatine seem like a teddy bear with the number of people he's had killed under his watch.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, there's a big difference being responsible for somebody's death and having your crazy Fedaykin going out there and they're going to do it anyway and there's no way for you to stop it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's my point.
There is, though.
There isn't.
You execute every single Fedaykin who breaks your rules. You say, don't do this, and then they do it. You string them up.
There'd be no more Fremen.
Then
that's the point.
They would be Fremen who behaved, that listen to what you say.
They would be wiped out
you
as a race.
Mm-hmm.
They wouldn't exist.
I don't see how.
Oh, okay. In the
first 100.
In the first book, Paul does everything he can to avoid the coming jihad.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the minute he steps over the line to becoming the Kwisatz Haderach, there is no way to stop the jihad. He is very clear on that. I can't stop it if I step over that line. However, he gets backed into a corner by the Emperor, the Spacing Guild, and the Harkonnens.
Mm-hmm.
He has no choice but to become the Kwisatz Haderach. They pushed him to do that, but that path is set. He can't change it. This book proves that his prescience, the way it works, once he's locked in a certain way, he can't go as far away from it as he wants to. That's his whole struggle, this book, trying to find a different way, and it never works. It's done. Once he becomes the Kwisatz Haderach, that thing is going to happen with or without him. You could literally kill Paul at the end of Dune. It still would have happened. The minute he became the Kwisatz Haderach, it was too late.
Okay.
It was too late.
He had been martyred at that point.
Yeah. So I can't blame everything at his feet. It's also the Emperor's fault, the Spacing Guild's fault, the Bene Gesserit's fault. They set him up for this. And, the Harkonnens, they pushed him into that corner where he had no choice.
Okay.
It comes down, speaking of themes, that comes down to destiny. And that's basically what prescience in this case is a destiny type thing of no matter what you try to do, this is going to happen. And, he's actively trying to fight it, especially in Dune. Mm-hmm. This one, he knows he can't fight it, but he's trying to change that path to the golden path. And he's trying to thread that string around. And at the end, we find, there's two kids.
Yeah.
So maybe there's
golden path is Leto's term.
Paul's
got the terrible purpose.
Yeah.
Is what Paul.
But he's trying to thread that string to keep, people alive that need to be alive.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
He mentions in his prescience that, like, if Chani had given birth when she was younger, she would have died earlier because of these, assassination plots.
Mm-hmm.
She would have been, if he had died earlier, she would have been strung up and murdered shown off to people as being responsible for his death.
I would have liked it if Herbert had shown us and told us why, if he tried to do this, instead of just having Paul tell us. We only know what Bill pointed out because Paul says it.
Mm-hmm.
Paul's words say it. We don't ever get Herbert telling us this would happen if he tried, and this is why it would happen. Because how would saying, okay, the first wave of jihadis go out, come back, find out the Fedaykin slaughtered people for this, this, and this, and exactly what Paul said not to do. All right, you punish those Fedaykin. You make sure it's public, make sure everybody sees and exactly what they did as to why they did it. And the next person to do that, you get put in the distiller too. We take your water straight without even killing you. We just shove you into to the death still, like they do in one of the Brian Herbert books. So they do that as a execution, and I don't remember which one. But all right, you make it public and you just tell them every time you do this, we punish you this way. You know, we don't even give your water to the tribe. We send you out into the desert like you send blind people.
So to talk about that, look how many freedmen are already distrusting Paul, even though they did exactly what they wanted to do.
Yeah.
Not
if he did what you described, if he did what you described, he would have created that many more enemies of the Fremen against him,
which would have led to him and his entire line being wiped out.
Yeah.
Which,
and if you want to talk about
people who weren't,
who could have stopped this,
faithful.
who could have stopped the jihad?
The
navigators. The navigators
True.
could have completely stopped off all interstellar travel.
Yeah.
Yep. But that means giving
they
up
need the spice. They need the spice, but they could have. Just as Paul could have, as being Gesserit could have.
I wonder if the galaxy, the universe, wouldn't be better off without interstellar travel in that case. I mean, 90 planets sterilized because of this. 61 billion people wiped out because of this. You know what? Bite the bullet, your spacing guild goes away. Bite the bullet, you don't have interstellar travel anymore. You know, just stay where you're at. And if the people on Dune can't survive because there's not enough resources without importing resources, well, gee, they had to be violent fuckers, you know. And I don't have any sympathy for groups of people that have to be as militantly violent as the Fremen in this movie and this book are proven to be. In Dune, the Fremen are nobles. They're a noble tribal people. They're seen as underdogs, but here we see nothing but bloodthirsty pieces of shit out killing because they think everybody else should worship the same way they do. Herbert took us from seeing Fremen in a good light, and now Fremen are the worst people in the books, in my opinion. At this point forward, Fremen are the worst. They're as bad as the Harkonnens. They're as bad as Shaddam the Fourth was. And I can't get away from what Herbert himself shows us the Fremen are like.
I think that's kind of the point, though. He wanted to show, okay, yes, there's this victory. They're free. What do they do with that? So, and that's what we're getting. And guess what? It doesn't always turn out pretty for that society. And that's his point.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
so, I mean, without it, you don't have the Dune series as it is. You would have a completely different story.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of necessary, and that's the story he wanted to tell. So
yeah,
like it was destiny.
I just know I went from liking the Fremen reading Dune to I don't like the Fremen at all now, and I can't. And I don't remember feeling that way previously before, when I read the books when I was younger.
Mm-hmm.
Something that's changed in my psyche.
Pretty violent in the first book. Yeah. I mean, they're pretty freaking violent.
Yeah.
In the first book.
They were.
They're brutal.
Mm-hmm.
But they're shown as being they're being shown under and because of the time period this was written, it was acceptable then, the noble savage trope, which is really what Frank Herbert wrote when he wrote Dune.
It's worth mentioning that in Dune, that the Harkonnen were mentioned as like they both were in societies where everything's out to kill you. Mm-hmm. It just happens to be in the Harkonnen society, everybody's trying to kill each other, whereas in the Fremen, the environment is trying to kill them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what allowed them to be the super soldiers.
Well, that, and they were always trying to kill each other, which is,
Like that's how he describes it, though. It's like he's literally talking about the parallels between these two of this is why the Harkonnens were so feared, is because they're in this horrible environment. And the Freemen are these hidden super warriors because they're in this, lethal environment.
Well, I
So
mean,
they're literally the same side of her, the opposite side of the same coin. It's just they're both in shitty areas, and they're following a leader who's causing them to do horrible things.
for me, I'd say the same thing. Only it's the Sardaukar and the
No,
Fremen.
that's what I meant.
They become the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes,
They become the Sardaukar of the New Age.
that's
Is
true.
all
Yeah.
they are.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's who I meant. The Sardaukar.
Just without
Okay.
the scary nipple on the back of their neck.
Hmm. Yeah,
I'll never get over the scary neck nipple.
I think that's the whole theme is like, do you live long enough to see yourself become the villain?
A
Mhm.
villain. Yeah.
Yeah, that's like literally talking about themes to wrap it back to the
Yeah.
question. Do you die a hero, or do you live long enough to see yourself become a villain? Or in this case, do both.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Anybody have anything else they want to bring up?
Mm-mm.
I think
No,
we had
just
a dang good.
I think overlooking some of the special effects, they were great for the day,
Yeah.
as we said.
Mhm.
Once you can let that go, the story does become a bit more enjoyable. And
would-
this next
Yeah.
half is really well acted. So
I would have enjoyed it more if I had read the books first.
probably.
If I came off from David Lynch's Dune into this, I'd be like, Jesus, guys, I'd be weeping tears of joy.
This
So,
is beautiful.
yeah, this
Yeah.
is all I knew of Dune as a whole. Then yeah,
Hmm.
I think it's meant for that audience.
So thank you guys. Bill, thank you for joining and becoming part of the team here. We're all happy to have you on the board.
Thanks for having me.
Mhm.
So everybody at home, thanks for watching. Please come back next week as we discuss Children of Dune Part 2.
Mhm.
What's the name of this one? Next one? Part 2. I
No
know
idea.
the other. The Golden Path is the third one. I don't remember what the middle part is. Oh,
The
come back
IMDb
next week
just
as we do at Part 2 of Children of Dune. Don't forget to be awesome.